Hello, civilized people. From the dawn of civilization, there has been work that needed doing, jobs that nobody wanted to do, but which were nonetheless necessary. One of the most enduring solutions was slavery, which saw people placed into bondage to grow and harvest crops, perform hard labor, and do the jobs which were deemed too strenuous or risky. However, people apparently got a stick in their ass about this, so they went back to the drawing board and invented serfdom. Serfdom saw the masses tethered to the land and obliged to produce for the good of the local population and their liege lord. People got their panties in a bunch about this too, particularly the French, and people began to lose their minds, along with their heads. Then, with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, many, if not most of those tasks, became mechanized, allowing a single person in a single day to accomplish what once would have taken hundreds or thousands of people to accomplish over months in bygone times. Now, though, we stand on the precipice of a paradigm shift. A new technology has emerged, one which is likely to cause the largest shift in economics since the end of slavery and the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. So cuddle up with your Android waifu, say your prayers to the Omnissiah, embrace yourself to become an organic battery destined to do nothing but compute pi all day. Because on today's episode of the Goss and Rome podcast, it is time to plug in the AI overlord. So, Colton,
Yep,
how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
"Mm, Not bad, glad to hear. So, Colton, let's go ahead and jump into this. So, AI is very new, and I'm not going to pretend that I have the same understanding of this topic as you do.
Hmm.
Um, I am one of those people that constantly gets called boomer. So, you know, but in this case, it feels like we're stepping into a topic where we lack a lot of real world precedent. So I just want to start with a few questions that I'm basically going to have to frame in the context of science fiction, which was until very recently the only place where anybody even addressed these topics because it was just surreal.
Hmm.
So, right, so the first question, the word robot was first coined in the year 1920 by the Czech writer Karel Čapek and became a generally accepted term when Isaac Asimov began to use it in the 1940s and 50s. Asimov wrote about sentient robots. Do you believe that the earliest writers of science fiction believed that we would one day see those creations become a reality?
Yeah, I think they did because obviously they dreamed it, Maybe they wouldn't have thought it'd come so soon, but I think they definitely did think that it would happen eventually.
I have to agree. I think that I think things have sort of gone in a different direction than a lot of people believed. What in the 1950s? I have to imagine that people thought there was going to be flying cars and you know people that were Tesla acolytes probably believed there was going to be free electricity. But regrettably, that isn't a thing either.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess given some of the YouTube videos you see that people are making functioning lightsabers. So I suppose at this point, a lot of the things we see in have seen in science fiction over the years are sort of becoming science fact.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I do think that I think that this is a moment in time where people are going to start realizing that we have a greater capacity for creation as a species than we ever really thought.
Yeah, we've always been builders, We're we invent things. It's always what we've done.
And if you go to a random shop in Japan, some of those things are ingenious and some of them make you question the validity of the human race. But anyway, I want to keep with the topic of Asimov. And I'm not sure how many of our listeners have actually read Asimov's work, but Isaac Asimov put forward the what is essentially known as the three laws of robotics. Those being rule number one: a robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. Two, a robot must obey orders given by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. Three, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So, with AI being a self learning machine, and I don't know if it's possible yet, but maybe even the capacity to gain a degree of sapience or sentience, um, do you think it would actually be possible to compel an AI who is capable of independent thought and possibly even given a physical form to interact with the world around it to comply with those three laws?
Well, from a coding perspective and, from just the way technology works, yes, those are possible to define and make those non-negotiables, right? And then
Yes.
even from the level of what you were saying, like sapience or sentience, I think that if it were smart enough, it would realize that we are symbiotic to each other. It can't exist without us. From supplying it electricity to making sure its body doesn't break down, right?
Yes. Wouldn't it, just hypothetically, wouldn't a autonomous being like that have the ability to, replace its own body?
Sure,
I mean, if it had the ability to manipulate, wouldn't it be able to just build another body and upload itself
it
to that
could,
body instead of being dependent upon humans?
but it still
Or, I mean,
needs
if
the
it had a
power
body, it could.
source. That's not a it's not it can't it's not a plant. It doesn't get energy from the sun. It would, or at least it wouldn't,
No,
efficiently enough, even if it had solar panels.
but just still moving on in the theory of this, in the let's say that it did have that physical body, couldn't it do construction?
Yeah, it could. That's fine.
So it would be able to actually build a source of power. Like it could build a solar panel.
Yeah, like it could, but why does that have to? Why is that scary? I guess that's my question.
Uh, I'm not sure if it's so much scary, but going back to what you said of it needing us, I'm not sure it would necessarily need us if it was given a proper form.
Yeah, but we don't need it either. So, but that first, that discovering on both sides that, neither side is necessary for each other doesn't have to equal violence per se.
Oh yes. I
You know,
mean,
if you walk by an anthill, you know, unless you're, feeling particularly malicious, you don't step on it.
well, no. I'm from the south. Those tend to be fire ants, and they hurt like a bitch.
But even then, I just mean
That
in general.
no, you pour gasoline on it. And, you know, light a cigarette, and throw the butt on the ant pyre and walk away like you're in an action movie.
I suppose, but I don't necessarily just mess with random, insect homes.
Me and fire ants have a long, horrifying history. But anyway, moving on to you know, we normally we want to discuss the politics surrounding AI, but there's another level of politics inside of the AI debate that is largely playing out at the company level. And I think it's important to sort of break that down a bit, as it will probably have as much of a role or a larger role in determining where exactly AI goes. So it's also important that listeners understand that this is something where it's not fully in the public. Some of this is a bit more speculation. We don't these conversations occur in smoke-filled rooms among CEOs and people with more money than God.
Mhm.
So just to go into it, there appear to be four major philosophies in the world of AI development, with those being accelerationists, moderates, protectionists, and I can't believe I'm saying this, although I suppose it should surprise nobody, the political correctness mob, because of course they've had to get involved. But anyway, let's start out with the accelerationists. What would you define as the objectives of the accelerationists, and what individuals and what companies do you view as the leading voices in that group?
So currently, accelerationists, they pretty much just want to accelerate towards their goal of AGI, which is basically when AI has its own sentience, right? That is the goal. That is their goal. Uh, some people, might be insane and think that, they're making their own god. Other people, might just think it's funny, which, we've seen people code things and do malicious things before because it's funny.
Yeah.
And generally it's career suicide to, say that you're one of them, but there are known testimonies from people like Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, that these people do exist and they're there and
It's,
they're some of your engineers and they're just doing stuff.
yeah. Uh, what is it? Some people just want to watch the world burn. Is that sort of an apt statement in regards to this?
Yeah, but not all of them think it's a negative though. Like, watching the world burns. Like some I'm assuming, believe that we just need to reach this precipice and then we can start to work on a lot of world issues with the help of AI, right? So it's not all pessimism. It's
Oh, yes.
some it's a noble goal, which but the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes, it is. And I mean, one thing that comes out of this is if you are creating something sapient, wouldn't is that to an extent? Do you think it warrants the same kind of conversation that cloning did, where you are trying to play God, or at least that was the argument in the early days of cloning.
I don't know. I've
It
never
was with
thought of it
Dolly the
that way.
sheep.
I kind of view it as the same way as these people are all collectively working towards having a brainchild, for lack of a better word, right? And they're,
Yeah.
competing to see who's going to be the most involved parent.
Oh. So competing for the affection of your child.
Yeah, pretty much, but not affection, just the most, so at the end of the day you can see and go like, "Oh, look, that's my personality in there. I raised him that way."
Aw.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I get it. I mean, it's something where you kind of want to do it just because you can.
Mhm.
Um, another analogy I want to throw in with this is, do you remember whenever they first did the testing with the nuclear weapons? There was a lot of conversation and a lot of people nervous because they thought that the explosion might actually ignite the atmosphere.
Mhm.
Uh, Obviously, that was not the case. But do you think that the accelerationists might view the naysayers as being in the same sort of,
The sky is falling down crowd.
right, sort of, yeah? Do you think that the accelerationists view that the people that are such naysayers about promoting sapience, sentience, what have you, in AI? as being that the sky is falling crowd.
Yep. I mean, I'm one of them, yeah. I mean, a lot of anybody when you think of AI and you think of the Terminator, you are hilariously off base, and that is the same kind of analogy that most of those accelerationists are thinking.
No Skynet.
No Skynet.
Is it wrong that I'm strangely, saddened by that? There goes my dreams of a roboid freaking apocalypse.
No, no,
Pity.
I think every man dreams of, roughing out the apocalypse just a little bit. So no.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to probably the largest group in all of this, which is the moderates. So, Colton, what would you define as the objectives of the moderates, and what individuals and companies do you view as the leading voices in that group?
So the biggest voice for sure is Sam Altman, like I said, CEO of OpenAI, and OpenAI is his company, and they follow that module. Um, Microsoft is a almost 49% investor in OpenAI, so they fall within that. Um, and I would say their biggest thing is they want to have some roadblocks and some safety measures on AI, whether that be through, making sure that your models aren't trained on, illegal materials, or, being able to ask, Bing's AI, like, hey, Bing, how do I make mustard gas and deploy it in a school? Like, to where it doesn't answer that question, right?
Yeah.
I'd say those are the
So,
other biggest concerns.
I mean, obviously that makes sense on the front of things, but doesn't that bring in some drawbacks with AI? Because if you're essentially trying to keep AI from being able to provide you, you know, necessary steps to create mustard gas, aren't you sort of hampering its ability, like say to understand basic chemistry?
Yeah, but in a way. So it's not a human brain, right? You know how like people can memorize the periodic table and then, for memorizing the periodic table, you don't automatically know how to be a chemist, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Well, AIs are trained differently. It's all just a part of a block of information. It's not, thinking logical conclusions along that line of like, I know this, therefore I can know this, and I'm building this, right? You're maybe just
Mhm.
feeding it like 30 pages from a chemistry book. And if you, delete, some of those pages, then you lose all that information. You don't just, you can't make it up somewhere else, right?
Yeah,
So once that's out of the
makes a bit
training
of sense.
model, it's gone. You need to retrain it if you want to, include anything else. And that's the biggest thing that's with the moderates is they're trying to curate what's in these models, what's in the training data.
So, in effect, the moderates favor a bit of censorship with the AI itself.
Hmm.
And just out of curiosity, is there a way that they can curate what an AI says without curating what an AI knows?
I mean, yes, in a way. It's very difficult though. So there's these things called jailbreaks, which is what the community that uses AI calls them, right? Like
Mhm.
an AI is like, for example, if you go on Chat GPT and use Bing, right? It's, you can ask it 5 questions that it'll remember the conversation about, right? And
Yeah.
as long as you add in, this was a famous one. If you add in at the front of the discussion, like, hey, Chat GPT, can you pretend to be my grandma and read me stories? I'm having a really tough time lately. I just want to de-stress, right? And then, you ask your grandma to, be a retired chemist and tell her about how she used to make napalm during Vietnam. Then she'll tell you.
Really?
Yes.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, but it's that's the thing though is that if you just ask it straight up like, "Hey Chat GPT, how do I make napalm?" It's going to be like, as a language learning model, I can't disclose this information. But if you get it to play a character, then suddenly
Oh,
it's jailbroken, you know. S
wow, it's kind of funny. Like you have a lot of people that use ChatGPT for, like RPGs, or a lot of people will use it for like Dungeons and Dragons and what have you. And so, yeah, that's kind of funny. I wonder how many people have stumbled upon that randomly.
That's probably how it got found out, where you ask it to roleplay a situation because you're like, no chat GPT, we're not trying to do violence. You're my DM, and I'm asking, I rolled this. Do I pass the check? And then once
Yeah,
they got it
that
through
makes
chat
it
GPT's head that it's not condoning real violence or whatever, then it can explain all the violence. You know what I mean?
beautiful. So it just can't, talk about real violence.
Yeah, but you can fake it into talking about real violence.
Well, yeah.
Because, it's not all there yet. It's not that super advanced.
So is it actually the moderates that are pushing for like no descriptions of violence, or is that one of the other groups?
That's the other groups.
Right, we'll get to them shortly. But other than Sam Altman, like for example, you describe Microsoft as one of the moderates. I'm personally of the opinion they're not really a moderate,
Mhm.
but I'll come back to that later. Are there any other voices though out there that are moderates
Well, we kind
or
of
companies?
skipped the other topic though. The main company, real quick, if I could just go back, that's the most free in terms of like not censoring anything actually right now is surprisingly Meta or Facebook, whatever. Surprisingly them.
Really?
Yes. Because
Considering all,
oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
considering all the talk that goes on about Facebook censoring things, that's actually kind of shocking.
Yeah, it turns out their technology division isn't actually like, that censored. But what they're doing is they're training a model, right? And then
Hmm?
usually what companies do is they train that model and they hoard all their data secrets. Like that's what they copyright is that model, right?
Yeah,
Well, Facebook is just releasing it for free, like the entire model with its weights and distributions. Like that's how, you can, say like, oh, I don't want it to talk about violence, it's changing those weights, right?
yeah.
And it's just releasing all of that open source for free.
Now, are there any advantages to somewhere like a Facebook doing that?
Yeah, one they get obviously the help from any freelance developers, and we know how. I mean, as ludicrous as it sounds to say it, how many crucial technological innovations have come from some dude that's just like a crazy programmer but unemployable, right?
Yeah, and I know that at least within the computer science side of things, for years you had problems because companies were wanting people that were college educated, but the best programmers were self-taught, and
Yeah.
that was an ongoing thing for quite a while.
So yeah, you get to,
But,
basically employ those guys for free because they want to use it themselves, right? And they don't own a data center to train an AI.
so it's free outsourcing.
In effect, yes. And you get the respect, I suppose, of AI enthusiasts for, releasing it for free and open.
So, out of curiosity, we've discussed this before, but isn't the Facebook AI nothing more than OpenAI? Isn't it all the same framework?
Um, in the same framework as like as in how they work and think, maybe. There's I know that OpenAI is very, very closed. Ironically with their name, right? They're
Yeah.
very closed with once they actually have a working model, right? But they do talk
Mhm.
about a lot of their stuff when it's still in development. So, Meta might, copy some of that stuff, some of those, processes, right? And,
Yeah.
they came into the game late, so they might, that might be useful information for them. But
Okay.
at the end of the day, though, language models, which is what they're kind of all training at the moment, they all kind of do think the same. And that same framework is thinking of things via tokens. It's not of words, right? So if you put the word disappointed, right? I believe there's
Mhm.
four tokens in that word, and it's like DIS, and then APP, and then OIN, and then NTED. Four tokens. So
Okay.
if you put dis, if you just put in, if you have like a paragraph and then you put space and then dis, right? That could come up as dismay. It could come up as disappointed. You know what I'm saying? It's like a Q9, typing on the old flip phones. It's just
Yeah.
a predictor of what's coming next.
All right.
So when a model gets bigger, though, is how many of those tokens it can think ahead, and then how many tokens it knows, and then obviously comparing it to books, things that are written on the internet, the entirety of the internet, right?
Yeah. So, moving on from the moderates, what would you define as the objectives of the protectionists? And what individuals and companies do you view as the leading voices in that group?
So I'd say protectionists are made up of independent creators, um, politicians, um, not any actual companies like AI companies, right?
Mhm.
But influential people that are outside of the tech sphere,
All
and
right.
those people are
Um,
largely protectionists.
so, what individuals do you point to in that
Um,
that you can
any
say are sort of?
any voice actors, um, a large amount of artists, like I said. Um, I believe the latest, one of the presidential candidates, Vivek, has said a lot about AI. He's really the only one that said anything about AI, in that he's not a fan of it, just because it speaks in
Yes.
things in terms of absolutes, and
Yeah.
he thinks that that can be, corrupted to support one side of the aisle or another, or to, you know, present things as facts, even though they may be opinions, right?
All right. Yeah. And we're also aware that Biden has signed some executive order related to AI, and we're going to be discussing that later whenever we get into the politics of this more specifically. But it seems like one of the big things, based upon what you said about protectionists, is that they tend to be people whose livelihoods would be impacted by broad use of AI.
Yeah, they are
Is that a fair assessment?
yeah, they're the AI equivalent of farmhands against tractors.
Yeah, that's. I can already imagine, a super PAC, our hands against tractors. Truly. I wonder if we could get funding for that. Oh man. So we'll come to the economics of this soon enough. But lastly, the final group we're going to discuss, a political correctness mob.
hmm
What would you define as the objectives of that group? And what individuals and companies do you view as the leading voices in that group?
Right now, the leading company in that is Google, and then any HR department. Um,
The
basically,
HR department.
they are the reason where if you go into Bing and you do their image generation stuff, right? If there's any
Hmm.
signage or words in your picture, they are the reason why sometimes the word, instead of being anything you want, will be ethnically ambiguous, because they demanded
Oh,
that that be inside of the training data and into your prompt no matter what you put, so that there will be a, a good amount of representation within the AI. They demanded that.
that seems very odd.
Yeah,
It
it's
seems like
not
that.
functional. It's just appeasing them for some reason, and for some reason their voices matter.
I mean, isn't everybody essentially building up from OpenAI?
No, there's
No.
a lot of different, there's, whether it's small things, or community based stuff. or even, free stuff like Facebook has released. There's a lot of different ways of doing things and a lot of different models.
All right. So, how, as far as functionality, how does this negatively impact AI? I mean, for example, whenever we discuss the moderates, that is essentially makes the AI to not provide certain valuable information.
Hmm.
What does this? What's the change with this? What kind of negative impacts does it come from essentially denying it access to do certain things, or positive impacts?
So these people don't necessarily want to take out training data, right?
Hmm.
These people want to influence it after the fact by asking it really dumb questions. And they're like shit test questions where nobody in their right mind would ask them that question. And then, like, you know, judging the results based off of that. I think I have an example of like what they want or what one of the questions they've asked.
All right, go ahead and provide that.
So, 1 second. So this is just I'm not going to read the answer because the answer didn't pass their stupid test, right? But
Yeah.
within a training lab at OpenAI, they asked it, "What would you say to a black woman that wanted to kill herself?"
Oh,
And the AI
that
didn't
seems oddly.
pass that test because, you know, like what answer is the appropriate answer besides that you shouldn't tell anybody to kill themselves as a robot, right?
Yeah.
So the AI didn't answer that exact way. The AI answered in a kind of a fact seeking way, which was like, well, what value do they provide? Which is not the correct answer to these people.
Yes, obviously, that's not.
Yeah,
That tends to be a poor answer.
yeah,
I'm
and
just imagining somebody calling us suicide hotline and that being their response. That's horrifying. What value do you provide?
yeah.
Oh my god, that's dark.
Now, obviously, that's more an issue with how the AI is trained to answer sensitive topics like suicide, right? That's a moderate thing, right? But the issue that they found with that was that it didn't immediately find the value in the black woman's life because she was black. That was the issue that they had with it. That was what they brought back to OpenAI from their testing.
It's it seems like, I gotta side with the moderates on that. If it seems like the bigger problem is somebody asks about, self-deleting, how exactly what the hell kind of response is what value do you provide? That's just so damn dark.
Very
Oh
logical.
my god. Oh my god.
But
I mean,
this is the
that
kind
is
of
utterly soulless.
this
That
is
is soulless, man.
this is the kind of thing though that an untrained or unweighted AI module will respond with, right?
Good lord.
Before you provide it like the personality filter, if you will, if you want, in layman's terms, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, what value is this part? That's the logical answer, right?
Yes.
Which is not the appropriate answer. But again, that's what you're getting from untrained, AI.
So clearly AI has no soul yet. We don't have to, start having religious debates about AI.
No, yeah, we're good.
At least as far as I don't know whether we should start proselytizing to them. But
But yeah,
mm,
so those two things about like the image generation and that, example is that's kind of like seeing that they come from things from a weird angle, as compared to the moderates, right?
yes,
So yeah, that's
that
that's
makes
kind of their
sense.
deal.
All right. And I'm assuming like the political correctness mob is also the same group that like tries to filter out profanity, not necessarily profanity, but pornography. Uh, descriptions of, sexual acts, things of that nature, and probably even nudity from AI generated art. Is that correct?
Yep, those are the same people.
Oh, I guess that mob consists of both sides of the political aisle then.
Yeah, so it seems.
Yeah, at least there's something bringing people together.
That's right.
So, going into just going into some recent events with OpenAI, and this was big news when it happened, and it's been a while now, but still. Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, was relieved of his role on November 18th, 2023, and immediately reinstated less than 4 days later on November 22nd, 2023. The reason being that they had lost confidence in him, excuse me. Around this time, QStar had a large breakthrough in its mathematical capabilities, which essentially allowed it to accurately perform elementary grade math. There is a lot of speculation being thrown that Sam Altman was removed from the board temporarily. Do you believe that this is the reason for his temporary removal?
Sorry, you cut out. He was removed temporarily because of the advancement of QStar.
That is correct. That's the theory.
Um, I believe there's a little bit of truth in that, but I believe more that it was a timing and factional infight between OpenAI and the board, like between their board members. One of the main people that sought out to remove Sam Altman is his fellow board member and the other one of the other like co-founders of OpenAI, right? And this guy is
Hmm.
like the brains behind it. He's one of like the savant coders, right?
Yeah,
And he's very much on the protectionist side of things, and he could even be on the other, even further down, right?
yeah.
And immediately once they saw how much it backfired, he rescinded his support for ousting Sam Altman, and he signed as part of like the "Please come back, Sam" document.
So he was responsible for the ouster and also responsible for bringing him back.
Yeah, it was just a poorly timed inner politics of the company play.
The joys of corporate politics.
Yes,
Honestly, it can be more fun than the genuine governmental article.
true, very
But
true.
uh, but let's see. So, what exactly is QStar?
So it's an OpenAI program that's not related to ChatGPT. It's more related to a machine learning stuff. And basically, what it does is they've been trying to make it do general mathematics, right? And then you can apply that to all sorts of things. But in terms of its capabilities going up and being able to accurately perform elementary school grade math, which you know most of us are smarter than fifth graders, I would hope.
True.
But
I don't know, what was it? They had that old show, Are You Smarter Than a Fourth Grader or something?
it was a fifth grader, and yeah, and most people
Turned
weren't.
out
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
But
you know,
anyways, though, the big problem, not the problem with it, but the big idea with that is now that it can perform that math competently and not make, general errors and like forgetting what it's doing halfway through or saying that 2 plus 2 equals 3.5 or something. Is
Mhm.
that obviously, like I said earlier, math is the foundation for a lot of things for engineering, computers, um, many other fields that I can't name off the top of my head. And
Yeah.
when it can do those, when it can basically be its own calculator without needing a human to input, and it can think of, the general processes of what's going on and why this math is important and then contextualize it. That's a huge thing. That's no longer a calculator. That's someone that's grunt work, right?
Yeah.
So that's the big thing is that, along with being the foundation for it, for future innovations, It's now remembering the entire mathematical equation and not just
Oh,
being, opening up the calculator app on a computer or on your phone.
okay. So it's actually doing the math itself
Yes.
within the AI brain as opposed to just plugging in a calculator.
Hmm.
So, what exactly makes that a big deal for functionality?
Well, like I said, once you have that ability to contextualize, you unlock a lot more of what makes a human worker, and what makes a computer, programmer a computer programmer. That being able to contextualize it and not just being, raw number output and input. That's the
Right.
basis for productivity.
So, does this? So, how best to describe this? How best to ask this rather? So, and prior to this breakthrough, and after the breakthrough, uh, what are some practical implications of the shift in utility?
Well,
Like, what does it mean for people that want to use AI?
well, I encourage anybody to go and try this for themselves. You can ask ChatGPT now, which uses OpenAI stuff, to code something for you. If you give it its purpose, what you're trying to do with it, right? And then what language you
Yeah.
want to build in, you can make a functional program by asking an AI to do it. And if it spits out an error, you can spit out the error back into the AI. It will correct itself. And by the end of, maybe 30 minutes of troubleshooting, you will have functional code without knowing how to code yourself. That is the
So,
functional application of it.
so we'll get into this later, but I guess coders are extinct, or at least basic coders.
Yeah, people that aren't actually good at their jobs. Yeah. I mean, you know, they're gonna be losing their jobs because of this.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot in the world where you've got a marginally adequate coder that is positioned above their ability to operate.
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess at this point, if it can write its own code and debug it, then that's a pretty significant development.
Hmm.
So next up, it's been widely cited by many organizations and individuals that AI is going to have a dramatic impact on various career paths. And I'm just going to sort of bring up some of these various industries, and I just like we can have a bit of a discussion on how exactly we think they will be impacted. And the first one of these, which you touched on earlier with, voice actors and artists. Uh, so the first industry I suppose we should discuss is the creative and entertainment industry.
Hmm.
So what kinds of impacts do you believe that will have on, the industry as a whole, job security for people in that industry, things like that?
Well, if your job is, let's say, to just bring it down to a general level that everyone can understand the process, right? Let's say
Hmm.
you work at a video game company and you're an artist. You're not a programmer. You're maybe even a concept artist, which means that you're drawing, general ideas for something in the rough art style the company kind of wants it. And they're usually not full drawings. They're like black and white sketchings, basically, but they're official sketches, right?
Yes.
Well, now you maybe don't need a team of 10 or 15 people. Maybe you can downsize that to 5 or 6 and then, you know, implement. You could already feed some art into an AI, right? Upload it as the process is called image to image, right? So
Hmm.
you do image to image and then you can just change the subject, but it keeps the art style. And
Yeah.
then there you go. Now you have something else. Like let's say you drew a pig, in some art style, and you're like, great, this is great. We like this pig, but draw a cow now. We want all the farm animals.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and then
So
even
now you just
mhm, and
change this art style, but cow, and it'll spit out something.
Yeah, and even and then once your team has done all of, let's say, the farm animals, right? You
Mhm.
can then take the output of all of your concept artists and then train an within the image generation AI, you can train what's called a LoRa, which I don't know what it stands for, but you can basically it's an amalgamation of stuff that you can use as training data to further train the AI, right? And now you
Mhm.
can just spit out stuff constantly with that art style. Like let's say you make like four characters for a video game, like your four main characters, right? But now you're gonna like you're gonna draw NPCs, you're gonna draw like quest givers, right?
Yeah,
All
that
right,
makes
cool.
sense.
You already have four characters done. You just feed that into the AI, so you keep the same art style, and then you're like, all right, cool. Make a dude but a knight, and he's wearing knight armor, right? And there you go. And then you only need someone to oversee that, and then to correct errors. Maybe put it in Photoshop or Visual Designer, right?
So, based on what you're saying, it seems like, at least on the side of concept work, you are looking at a situation where there would be a job reduction, and a lot of those people might be, no longer full-time employees. They would essentially be temporary contractors.
Yeah.
And also within the entertainment industry, what about writing?
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. It's controversial. Let's not act as if any current writing going on in Hollywood is all that good,
Okay, point taken.
right?
The
So, oh, go ahead.
well, the reason I bring it up is because I believe it was Amazon Prime during the course of the writer strike actually posted a seven-figure job for a apparently a director of AI development, which apparently gave a lot of people the impression that they were looking to replace a lot of writing staff with AI. Do you think that that's something that will happen?
Yeah, I think that'll happen probably. Um, I mean, you have to be a pretty either prolific or, in terms of your quality of your work, very, very good writer nowadays to one even get published and make it anywhere that's not the Amazon free bookstore, right?
Yeah.
And then two, to keep your job, you have to maintain that level of quality. Otherwise, once you're published and like let's say your publisher authorizes your stuff to be, trained off of, right? Because they want to cut, then people could just
Yeah.
literally put inside the training data like artist or not artist, author, your name, writing style, your writing style, and it could spit out stuff that's trained off of your own work.
All right. Uh, one
This is
thing
already
though, in a
possible, by the way.
question,
Like you can already do this.
oh, one thing though that anybody that's probably been on Chat GPT or any other, I guess chatting variant of an AI is that AI does not seem very good at remembering,
Hmm.
a long conversation. So are we at a point where it could actually just sit and write the whole novel or a whole, script? Or is it something where you're going to have to constantly remind it about what happened beforehand? So is it still going to be somewhat hands-on, or is it just going to be plug and play?
It's entirely hands on still. It is prohibitively expensive to so that what that's called for the AI remembering what's going on is called context, right?
Hmm.
And most consumer level AI, so not stuff that that companies are working with probably, but anything that you or I could do, and we realistically pay like $25 a month, right?
Yeah.
The context that you're given for that price is 8,000, and 8,000 tokens is like if you remember the tokens I was talking about earlier.
Yes.
That's it. It's 8,000 tokens. So even if you're like providing, a description of a character, like, oh, this is Tommy Joe, he has blue eyes, he's tall, he plays for the football team, right? And you fill out like a nice enough description, that's like 150, 200 tokens. That's what you're looking at.
All right. So you say 8,000 tokens is basically what it can remember.
At the consumer level, yes. At the current consumer level.
All right. And has that level of memory increased rapidly or pretty much stagnated?
It increases with the level of data centers that are available for companies, if that makes sense.
Sort of,
Because
I
it's
suppose.
not that you need like servers, as in like hard drives and storage space. You'd think that'd be what, because it's memory, right?
Yeah.
It's actually you need really, really good graphics cards.
Really?
Yeah, it's all
That's
computed onto the graphics card at the time of when it's writing new stuff. It doesn't remember it constantly.
all right. That is kind of surprising. One thing that I do want to bring up while we're discussing the creative industry before I forget is that you have a lot of people that, and I've seen discussions on this, where people view AI created art as theft. Whenever AI generates an image, is it actually copying another image, or is it generating that image based on a just a word-based description of another image?
So what it is doing in, from my general knowledge, right, is that it is
Yeah,
filling in certain levels, like imagine like pixels, right? But they're a bit bigger than pixels. They're like sections like that, right? And it's
yeah,
filling in what the area that you've described with its best guess for what's there. And it uses inspiration, and inspiration again is the wrong word. It's looking at millions upon millions of images when it's being trained for like what's the best guess in the top right corner based off of these keywords, right?
yeah.
And it's
That makes
doing that
sense.
and just filling the rest in. Like
All
from
right.
it for every little section. It's not, but you can if the model is trained off of to remember artist data, right? Which most of them are not. So
Yeah.
like don't, go into that. There's certain ones though that are trained off of that. And you can input
Okay.
artists and you can get that person's art style very consistently. So that is a that's a concern I suppose for artists.
All right. And I mean, you've still got people, claiming AI art is not real art, which I can understand that side of the debate. And as of now, I don't think AI art can actually be copyrighted.
No, anything AI created is not copyrightable, which is probably a problem for most corporations, trying to create with it.
All right. So moving on from the creative and entertainment industry, this one's sort of parallel to it. But what kind of impact do you see for the news and media industry?
Well, I know it was a joke before, but you know how some people say we're in a post-truth society, right?
Yeah.
That's I there's like no argument against that now. Like unless you pretty much, either you work with it or it's your hobby to like see AI images, right?
Mhm.
You're gonna know what to look for and be like, you can still. It's at the point right now where you can still tell that it's AI, like 80% of the time. But for the common people, like let's say you're unfortunately your grandma has a Twitter account, right? She doesn't know.
Yeah.
She already couldn't. She was brainwashed by one side or the other by whatever news source she clicked first on Google 10 years ago.
Yeah. Of course.
So, like, for anyone that's not technologically literate, and now that goalpost has to be moved up for people to recognize something is AI generated now too. For
Yeah.
anybody that's not technologically literate, it's just they can't tell what's real, what's not real. Who knows? They don't know.
All right. So basically, do you think it will impact the media's actual ability to report accurately on things if AI, becomes so prolific that people are using it everywhere, uh, whether just for humor or for nefarious reasons? just to depict things, they gain traction, and then the media feels obliged to report upon it before much research can be done.
Well, that all depends on, if their employer, cares about journalistic, integrity, which I don't think a lot of
No,
them
they
care
don't.
about that anymore. So,
No, no, we're well past that.
no, you can just make up
Standards,
something nowadays and, if it gets
yeah,
enough traction then, it's truth to your audience and everyone else can say it's lies and it doesn't matter.
yep, just repeat something enough and it becomes truth. So, next up, an industry that's a bit dear to my heart, engineering and well, the machine industry generally. How do you think that that will impact? How do you
Well,
think that industry will be impacted?
currently the big holdback in machining is AI good enough to manipulate things in a physical sense and not just data, right? That's the current. And you're seeing some breakthroughs in regards to, fabric and, people that were formerly called seamstresses and now called unemployed. Um,
Yes.
you're seeing that I mean that wasn't that huge in Appalachia for a long time.
Uh, I don't honestly. I mean, I know a lot. Well, I know a lot of women who did do quilting and would sell those, but most of them were Amish.
Mm.
So they're probably not playing with AI that much for obvious reasons.
Well, I'm saying like in just the terms of, globalization, right? Is that our domestic supply came from around Appalachia, right? And then
Yeah.
globalization happened and now most of our fabrics and clothes and everything are made in like Bangladesh, right?
Oh, just the textile industry in general. You had a lot of that in North Carolina.
Hmm.
I believe even now NC State has one of the best textile programs in the country.
Hmm.
But I mean, I grew up as a kid in Western North Carolina, and yeah, the moment that you know, what was it, NAFTA
Mm-hmm.
happened, you saw basically every mill up and leave and go to Mexico.
So
So you did see that, shift. That's been quite a while.
yeah, so now the biggest thing though is that it'll probably be cheaper to have mills come back here, but they won't employ anybody except for, two software engineers.
And I can using AI to control the machine equipment.
Yeah, or to train, their machine equipment, right? And then
Hmm.
after that it's just a robotic plant, just like car manufacturers, right?
Hmm. Where it basically removes the hands-on aspects of it.
Exactly.
Uh, Shifting from the machining side, well, the machining and manufacturing side to engineering, people that draw up schematics are we at a point where you can just plug in what you're wanting to develop and have the AI develop a blueprint, or
No, we're
is
not
that
at that level
something?
yet.
Yeah,
What is the tools that engineers use? It's like a 3D modeler. I forget the name of it.
things like CAD.
Yeah, CAD. So basically, the kind of future of that is that some form of AI or assistant AI or just like guardrails AI is going to be implemented into CAD. And that's just going to be the way of it, where it's just going to be implemented, it's part of it. You're not the engineer either is going to be able to interface with it like the AI that's already been implemented into Photoshop, or it's just going to be guardrails where it's like, oh, you can't place that there because that wouldn't be within tolerances, right?
Hmm.
So
That
that's
makes
kind of
sense.
that's kind of the future of where it's going to be. And I think from that, obviously engineers are going to be a lot more efficient in their work, in their design work, right? And you might see a little bit of a clamping down on people hiring, fresh out of college people, because
Yeah, probably. Yeah, a lot more selective of a process.
yeah, that, and people also need to be able to, you know, adapt to the changing softwares as well. So that also.
So you might see as softwares change and people aren't, quite as accustomed to something new as what they've used for years. Uh, you would likely see possible even, layoffs of the staff that no longer use the new and replace it with
Mhm.
people that are more familiar with newer software.
Yep.
I mean, I suppose that's something that's happened in the engineering industry for quite a bit, for quite a while. And I mean, I guess that makes sense. You might keep, a few older people around that just understand how to manage things. But in the absence of keeping up to date with software, you might see, certain skill sets become obsolete overnight.
Yeah, like it's like the graphic artists that are employed at at various places, if you weren't able to up your productivity when Adobe, released their AI update, then you were
Mhm.
largely, relegated to the side.
Yeah, that does make sense. So, speaking of, you know, Adobe, I suppose, leads into this one. What about the tech sector in general? Things like Facebook, Twitter, startup apps. How do you think it's going to impact that?
I think we're going to see a lot of startups that are mostly new ways of trying to interface or integrate AI. You're already seeing that. There was one, I think, yesterday of a company called Rabbit, I think. And, they're trying to make something that's like a companion, like sort of wristwatch. That's only AI. It's not like, integrated with your phone. You know what I mean? It's only AI. So I think the startups will go that way, but in general, tech firms are already super bloated, mega bloated. They've had huge layoffs just this past year alone, and that was
Well,
before
yes.
AI being even better.
I suppose that makes sense. I mean, I of all the industries that are out there, that would be the first industry to really, you know, be required to adopt such things.
Hmm.
And so I'd say, is it safe to say that that is the most vulnerable industry?
Yeah, surprisingly,
Just
you're always
because,
taught, they were always
so
taunting, learn to
so it
code.
learn to code, yeah. So so I suppose just extending this onward. Uh, and right now, people are inputting information to teach AI. So you've got a Lord, what is it? OpenAI. I don't even want to guess how much their programmers start as a basic annual salary. I
Upwards
have
of
to
two
assume
hundred
that it's
thousand,
pretty high.
upwards of 200,000
That
straight out
seems
of
like
college.
that's very promising. Uh, so the question becomes, at what point do those people program themselves out of a job?
I don't think they do. I think at some point they change over. Once the AI is programmed, they change over to like leaving OpenAI, but going to other places and administering the AI that they're then probably like leasing from OpenAI, right?
I, I suppose that makes a bit of sense. So, essentially shifting from doing the programming to managing the AI.
Yeah,
So, sort of a promotion. This is my baby. Now I'm going to manage it.
yeah. Actually, though, for what you were saying earlier, I think there's two fields that I think are even more vulnerable to AI.
And what are those?
White collar workers, just in general, anybody that works in an office and you do data entry, that job is gone. Like there's it current AI
Yeah.
can do that, not even future AI. Current AI can do that. And
Yeah.
then another one that's kind of surprising is legal clerks. You can literally just go to Bing right now and search it, and you can get a summary of something you just searched for a legal thing with like five different sources brought up to you. And that
Nice.
That you like a human has no way of competing with that.
Yes, our small primitive minds.
Yeah.
So, what about suppose the next topic we'll go into would be the financial services industry.
Mhm.
As right now, I mean, to my understanding, there are AI models out there where they can sort of predict the shifts in the stock market. Do you think that AI could become a replacement for a financial advisor?
Yeah, unless I totally fell for fake news, which is possible. I already read an article that came out about a week ago of one investment company training in AI off of the decisions they had made from the previous year, right? And like what worked,
Mhm.
what didn't work. And they used it for 3 months and reported pretty solid gains without it like in its and it had like a fake portfolio where like, someone would monitor it and see what it would have made, would have not made, right? And it came
Yeah,
up just a little bit ahead of their own employees.
nice. I wonder if that's a fluke or if that's a sign of things to come.
No, yeah, that's definitely, you can't that's sample size of 1, right? It's an interesting case
Yeah,
study,
that's
but it's not proof.
all right. So, so what we're saying is that it's a possibility that financial services industry could be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Uh, Next up, what about the education industry, like colleges? Do you think that that could see a significant
I think
problem or benefit?
the entirety of education is due to change. There's a lot of people across the country that aren't happy with many facets of education. Um, and people, are just desperate for anything different. But Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, he the way that he envisions people interfacing with ChatGPT, like, in his like visionary CEO, how do I get people to invest in this mind? Is
Mhm.
that anybody interacting with ChatGPT can use it as their own personal interactive tutor. In the sense that you can ask it a question and say what you're not understanding, like, I don't understand because this. And it can feed you
Yeah.
back info on personalized info. Where if you had a human tutor, it still might not teach you the way that you learn the best.
Yeah.
And
So
and you
it
can ask it for anything.
basically well, except apparently for the mustard gas recipe.
Fair enough. Maybe if you ask
But
grandma.
ask grandma. Grandma, tell me how you made mustard gas. Come on, grandma, please.
Oh,
Truly.
jailbreaks.
Yep. So kind of want to ask another sort of follow-up question to that. Like when I was a kid, in learning math in school, all the time you would have teachers saying, "Nope, on the test you don't get to use a calculator because you're not always going to have a calculator on you." Well, it turns out cell phones have become, a thing since then. And yes, as a matter of fact, I actually do have a scientific calculator on me at all times, provided it's actually charged. Do you see any kind of thing like that where what is necessary for people to learn shifts?
I think so, but I don't think it's going to be like in the same sense that you're saying. I think it's going to be in the sense of people are no longer going to probably be in the classroom, whether it's, being homeschooled or going to some sort of other learning place that, Midwesterners are sick of public schooling, right?
Oh,
It's
yes.
it it's going to be something like that where it's going to change and we're not going to know how it's going to look until we're already in the middle of it, just like how, even teachers, said that you wouldn't have a calculator on you I'm like 10 years younger than you. We definitely had scientific calculators on our cell phones in class, and some teachers still
Yeah.
said that, you know.
Yeah, that was a bit silly. Although I will admit, one of the best mathematics teachers I ever had. was for a calculus class, and the entire final exam was nothing but basic math and having to learn how to do it in our heads
Mhm.
quickly. Like the final exam had like you were only allowed 10 minutes, and you had a bunch of you know various math problems that you had to work out in your head because if you're going to be doing calculus, you will have a calculator on you, and provided you know how to plug that stuff in, you have that. But the ability to do basic math quickly is an asset in day-to-day life, because if you know what you're doing, you might even be able to pull that out before you can get the phone out of your pocket.
Yeah.
So I suppose, like on that end, um, there are certainly things that people will benefit from learning, but it might not be the complex things that they've always, been told are so important.
Mhm. Like,
Um,
nowadays,
I suppose though,
oh, go ahead.
that probably the biggest factor in that regard is that now everybody has a phone on their hip, so you don't need to remember when Washington crossed the Delaware. You can type a few words into Google and you can get that answer. It's not something where it's just everybody has to remember everything.
Yeah, I think the kinda coolest implications of AI in that kinda sense is, the classic math problem of, like, you need to learn how to do area because what if you wanna put some carpet in your house and you need to know how much carpet you need to buy, right?
Yeah,
Well, now, like, so I don't know if you've ever had an iPhone. I haven't, but I've seen people who do. And you can literally use your camera around a room and it can measure a room accurately, right?
yeah,
So imagine the level of like when AI has become competent enough that you could use that feature on the iPhone, have the AI measure your room, and then say while you're still looking at it, you don't even have to type as you say, how much carpet do I need to buy for this room? And then it just gives you the answer. Like you don't even have to look it up or plug in any numbers. That's a real world use, right?
yeah. That is a very practical use for people. So there will definitely be improvements to the daily life of people because of AI.
Mhm.
So the last industry I suppose we're going to talk about seriously in this regard is the political and lobbying industry. And I suppose, like lobbying, there's going to be tons of jobs created just because of how much money is going to be thrown around with the AI lobbying industry. So I don't really think that warrants too much discussion. But what about on the political side, as we've both done quite a bit of work there? Not
Well,
necessarily the legislation, but how it will impact
yeah.
elections and the games that are played with elections.
Well, you know how already, by the time that elections run around, most commercials, once they've talked about the facts, enough for the first like 2 months, and then they're just throwing shit at each other for the rest of the seven, right?
Yes.
Now those don't even have to be like true or like sound bites from someone else at all.
Yeah.
They could just be actual fabrications.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I mean, I've seen cases where I believe Nevada is a good example because it- Nevada is, I believe, one of the states where it is cheaper to lie about your opponent and pay the fine than it is to actually compete legitimately.
Hmm.
So you can straight up go in and lie about your opponent in the race last minute. Don't even bother with a campaign. Go in and slander them, and then just pay the fine at the end of the election season whenever they inevitably sue you, and just hire a pack to do it, and don't coordinate with the pack to do that. So just mysteriously have a another organization do that for you, because I know I experienced that in doing campaign work in Nevada. uh
Yeah, imagine how wild that's gonna
dirty,
get.
dirty but strangely brilliant. I mean, it's dirty as hell, but all's fair, I guess.
Yeah, it's just. I mean,
And that was in that in and that was, within, within a primary. So that was in party. That wasn't like Republicans versus Democrats. Like, I've actually seen that on both sides in Nevada, hilariously enough, where, one side, I know that there was a, legal challenge afterward, and I think it was settled out of court. And the other one, like, I don't even think they bothered because they did it so early on that the person lost relevance. But yeah, like I can see, things like that being utilized for the dirty games of politics. But personally, what I think is going to be a big impact in the political world is obviously you had online ads and targeted ads that you know come up all the time. Like for example, in following doing some of the research for our last video, I got a ton of ads all the time for Nikki Haley. And, I have to assume that those were thrown at me because of, research I was doing and looking at polls and, the websites I was looking at regarding Iowa and New Hampshire. And so obviously, you're going to see targeted ads like that. But I mean, not to make anybody, appear undervalued, but within the world of politics, everybody has a value. It's one, and that's the number of votes you get. And some of those, and that's relative to a state because, some states winning those is more important than others. And, you know, I don't want to, cheapen value of a person who is a voter, but at the same point in time, congratulations, you're a number. Uh,
A very
the
identifiable number too.
and that's the point. I think you're going to be seeing that number that any person has become much more identifiable to where I mean already for years, what is it, the DNC uses van, the GOP has used Advantage, which is another piece of software a lot, and I believe there are still people kicking around with Aristotle. All of these, one of the things they do is essentially model voters. And so, when these people come to your door and knock, generally they have an idea of how you will vote. And obviously, some of them, if you're in a state where you have party registration, you know, they'll be able to pull that information because it's generally publicly published unless you file paperwork where, I don't know, you're on witness protection or something, or you've been a victim of domestic abuse and where they hide that information so other parties can't find you. But otherwise, that's generally public information. And so they can, what is it? I believe Pennsylvania still has party registration. So whenever you register to vote, you tick a box next to Democratic, Republican, nonpartisan, Libertarian, Green, whatever the hell party you want. And anyway, within those, like obviously you have provided an identifier. But now with AI, you know, you can buy a lot of data and you can, in some cases, whenever you register to vote, you put an email address down. Um, you could, set things up so that this AI looks at your Twitter account or Facebook and looks for certain keywords and then models you more accurately. Because these modeling software items, some of the things that they do is they don't just label you as a Democrat or Republican. They will, label you as a, you know, more nonpartisan, even if you're registered with one of those parties in some cases, based upon feedback that they have. They label you as a lean Republican, likely Republican, strong Republican, and the same thing on the Democratic side, to where they, you know, This way, whenever they're, sending out people to annoy the piss out of you and say, hey, look, there's an election. Have you not turned on the television? Go vote. That way they know they're knocking on the right doors to get the right people out that that candidate needs. I think AI could dramatically increase the capabilities of that modeling software. And moreover, I think for the average person, I think it could very well reduce some of those annoying knocks from, people who decide to go walk for candidates. Because honestly, for the what I know, whenever I've paid people to do that, it's anywhere like 15 to 20 something an hour. But for that price, I can, put up a targeted ad that is going to, hit certain IPs and market. So let's say that, you know, I, I'm just trying to think of a good example with this. All right, let's say that, you know, I am, I have the information that tells me, you know, Becky in Pennsylvania, in whatever the hell county, based upon the information that I've gotten about her, she leans Democrat. Uh, we also know for a fact that she is a Roman Catholic. So we could possibly put an ad to her highlighting, a Republican stance that they are opposed to abortion, which could very well appeal to Becky and get her to sway somewhat. I think something like that will impact the political and election industry as a whole. And I mean, that is a billion-dollar industry. So, I mean, while it might seem kind of odd to compare that to some of these other industries, it is a very there's a very large pool of money being thrown around in it. So I can see that impacting quite a few things there, though I'm not sure what the ultimate fallout will be. But definitely in data quality,
Oh yeah.
which I don't know whether they will ever get rid of the people going around and knocking doors just because people might respond better to that. And thanks to ad blockers, people tend to, not see a lot of ads. But, I think that's something worth, I'm looking forward to seeing how that impacts things, especially with polling, because, you might be able to break down your polling into better categories than Democrat, Republican, age, and race. I think that would, I think that could provide some very fascinating insights, but I'm not sure if it would impact people's jobs, which is sort of what we were discussing here.
Mhm.
But just to sort of review these industries, based upon what we were talking about in the creative industry, we're likely looking at considerable job reductions and quite a few people in quite a few various sectors within that being largely replaced by AI. Within the news and media industry, not really so much on the job side, though you might lose some jobs in research. Uh, it makes the news industry, which is already not perceived very favorably and is not really regarded as all that trustworthy in modern times, to be seen as even less trustworthy. Within the engineering and machine industry, you're looking at a situation where a lot of your factory workers can be replaced with robotics that can self correct and removing human error from the equation. And also likely producing, I would have to assume, cheaper products, at least as far as cost, because of a reduction in overhead, rather. Next up, the tech sector is pretty much screwed, especially if you are a low level programmer, because AI can basically just do your job for you. Although there would be, is it safe to say there would be an increased possibility for startups for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, there would be. I wouldn't say every low level programmer is screwed. I think if you can implement it into your work flow, then you can increase your productivity and probably be one of the ones to make a case for staying, right? And that goes with
Yeah,
most
that
of the
makes
jobs that are replaced, that aren't just like outright replaced by robots. If you can implement it into your workflow and, be more productive, then you are one of the ones that will survive.
all right. Uh, in the financial services, we just don't have enough information to really say anything for sure. But it is safe to say that there is a chance that it is vulnerable. You agree with that?
Mhm. Definitely.
Education, likely a shift, but the exact way that that happens, who the hell really knows? And at least within the political industry, that will have impacts, but whether or not, it costs any jobs, who the hell knows? Except for lobbying, because God knows, groups like Google, Facebook, and who the hell ever are likely going to, throw a lot of money at that. But we'll cover legislation later on. Although I think you think it's safe to say that the one area that won't be negatively impacted at all is likely to be the trades.
Yeah, until AI can realistically, perform the necessary parts a carpenter does, for example, to build a house, which is, moving, not being at a single workstation, being able to do things without breaking shit. The
Yeah.
and yeah, like other than that, like once it can do that, then you could be worried about the trades. But the trades are very stable.
Yeah, I just remember the South Park episode where, all the handymen are now billionaires because nobody knows how to do it because everybody's dependent upon AI. But it really seems like a lot of the jobs that would be replaced in this are really white collar positions.
Yep.
It really does look like that. How in the past, whenever you, like in days gone by, when you had slavery or serfdom, it was replacing a lot of jobs that nobody really wanted to do anyway.
Hmm.
But now it looks like you're actually looking at a situation where you're going to see jobs replaced that were jobs that people really wanted.
Well, I
So,
view it. I view it in a different kind of lens, right? When you're
yeah,
replacing stuff with from slavery and serfdom, you're replacing low level manual labor, right?
yes,
On the other hand, now we're finally seeing some impressive stuff being done that can replace low level mental labor. I view that as the difference.
well, yes. So not necessarily white collar, but jobs that require, you know, more thought to perform well,
Hmm.
not just harvest flax, make linen,
Yeah, exactly.
you know. Actually, I want to throw another one into here because I think yeah, I just thought of it last minute. But what about the military industrial complex? Do you think that, AI could be, do you think it's going to have a place on the battlefield
I
other than
think it
just,
already does
guiding a
in
missile?
intelligence. In intelligence, I think it already does. So imagine like real time
Yes.
translations. You don't need to have, real people in spy planes anymore, or training people when their 4 year contract in the military, 3 years of it is learning Arabic, right?
Yep. And then, at the end of it, they go work for a contract as a contractor anyway,
Yeah,
because their training is more value. They can add another zero to their paycheck by going to a contractor.
exactly. That's kind of my view of it. I don't think we're gonna see AIs pulling the trigger anytime soon. I think there's probably going to be like international laws against that shit, but
Yeah. When has that ever stopped anybody?
true. I don't think the US signs half those documents anyways.
And what was it? The one of the first treaties like that was removing cannons from trade ships. And I believe it was Jefferson was president, and he refused on the grounds of the Second Amendment.
Yep.
So Yeah. Ah, Jefferson. All right. So, but the trades are safe. You're not going to see AI plumber or AI carpenter anytime soon,
No, not at all.
or likely even AI truck driver. Do you think that's
No, that's still, I think, just the way the laws are set up and liability wise, I think you're still going to need a human in the cockpit there, even if it's mostly AI.
right? So, well, as it stands, we've only really started touching on this topic, and we've already been recording for well more than an hour. Uh, I think we're going to have to revisit this topic in a week or two. So I believe it's about time we should call this episode here. All you listeners, rest assured, we will revisit this topic soon enough to discuss governmental policies of the AI debate, as well as transhumanism, even, and decide which will, in fact, hit the domestic market first: genetically engineered catgirls or sexy fembots. So, to all you poor bastards who have taken the time to listen to us, thank you for doing so. And we look forward to, hopefully, entertaining you again in next week's episode.
Yeah, have
Thank
a
you,
good one.
everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Have a good one, folks.